Masayoshi Son is one of the craziest billionaires who ever lived.
Well, we have been investing into more than 300 AI companies in the last several years.
And many think he is the craziest. Interestingly, he was actually the richest man in the world for about 3 days, eclipsing Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and their peers.
Don't embarrass me. I'm so much regretting my life. He and I were just one-on-one in a small hotel.
Unfortunately, after that, he lost about $70 billion, practically overnight. And this was the biggest personal loss of money that ever happened to anyone, ever. He's unconventional, to say the least, though he did once manage to secure $45 billion in funding after a 45-minute meeting.
$1 billion per minute.
Everything this man does, he does to the extreme, and he's responsible for what many consider the greatest investment ever made. However, many feel that he is an irresponsible gambler, using the economy like a roulette table. This man famously once threatened to set himself ablaze if he lost the deal, and he takes insane risks and bets on the future of humanity every day. Buckle up, because this is the story of why Masayoshi Son is known as the craziest billionaire ever. The ambitious outsider. Masayoshi Son was born in 1957 in Tosu Saga, Japan. His parents were migrants who emigrated from South Korea to Japan by hiding on a little fishing boat. They were destitute, with no food, no home, and no knowledge of the Japanese language. As a result, Masa Son's upbringing was bleak, as he was considered an outsider in the highly insular Japanese culture due to his Korean heritage. As a child, his classmates would bully him mercilessly, throwing rocks at him regularly. His father, Son Samjungyuai, was an odd-job man, doing whatever it took to make money, from raising pigs to selling alcohol illegally. Masa Son, as is so common with the incredibly successful, knew that he needed to achieve more and had a strong drive to succeed. The bullying he received only spurred him on, and he came to a conclusion about his plan for life by the time he was in middle school. No matter what it took, he wanted to become Japan's most successful businessman. He had a strong admiration for Den Fajita, the man who had brought McDonald's to the country, and even then, he had an unorthodox methodology. As a teen, Masa would call Fajita's office constantly, asking to speak with him, but being rebuffed by the secretary. Realizing that he could do better by spending the phone bill money on a plane ticket,
They don't give me the right answer, so I said, okay, this is a waste of my telephone bill. So I flew into Tokyo, and I said, I came because the phone call becoming more expensive than air ticket.
Masa flew to Tokyo, demanding to meet with Fajita. As is often the way with Japanese culture, Fajita found Masa Son's determination inspired and actually agreed to a 15-minute meeting with the kid, who asked him for advice.
Actually, he spent 15 minutes with me, talking face to
And
face.
he gave you some advice, which was to learn.
Yeah, I asked him, what business should I do? Computer.
Fajita told him that he should get into computers and that he must go to America, and Masa took this advice to heart, flying to the States at the young age of just 16 years old, hitting the ground running. Finding his way into Saramonte High School and staying with friends and family in San Francisco. As an incredibly impatient person, Masa realized he wasn't getting results fast enough, and he actually managed to convince the school to let him take the college entrance exam early. Despite the fact that he was 16, he was bright but by no means a genius, and his English was a work in progress. He actually managed to scrape the passing grade, which means that he completed high school in just 3 weeks and graduated under a month after enrolling. Incredibly, he then went on to study economics and computer science at the University of California. It seems far-fetched, but as the young student, Masa needed money, but also was committed to his studies. He decided to ask his friends if there were any jobs around where he could earn $10,000 a month, but only have to work 5 minutes a day. His friends, of course, assumed he was crazy, but he was simply looking for the most efficient expenditure of his time. The Great Inventor. He decided that the best possible thing he could do to make money was to become an inventor, and so he spent 5 minutes every day coming up with ideas, with the intention of patenting them and selling them on. Of course, not all of his ideas worked out, but he did come up with some good ones.
So I said, okay, what is the best, most efficient use of my time? It's invention. It's invention, and I have to file patent. If I get the patent, 5 minutes, if I focus, I can come some idea. I can make some idea. So I set alarm clock 5 o'clock, 5 minutes. And take. In 5 minutes I said, come, invention, come, come, right?
Young Masa had concluded that there were 3 principal approaches to having good ideas. The first was, obviously, to find ways to solve problems, like, for example, when his pencil kept rolling off the table. He considered the benefits of a hexagonal or square one, like we have now. The second approach was to look at existing things from a different perspective, like, for example, making current products smaller for convenience. He invented a traffic light system with shapes instead of colors to aid those with color blindness. The third approach he considered was combination, taking things that existed and combining them for practicality, like a radio that also has a cassette player. He managed to amass over 250 invention ideas and kept them all in a book. The best of them, he concluded, was a pocket-sized translator device that would convert text into different languages, and he was able to recruit a physics professor to help him with the prototype. He then began pitching every company that he could find, while he paid another Asian student to cover him on his missed lectures. Eventually, Masayoshi Son was able to get a meeting with Sharp Corporation, and he sold his electronic translator patent to them for $1.7 million. This means that by the age of 19, he was already a millionaire on paper. Triumphant Return. Meanwhile, he had also begun importing video game arcade machines from Japan to the US, setting them up in bars and restaurants. This means that he was instrumental in bringing the video game boom of the late 70s and early 80s into existence. In just 6 months, he managed to import over 350 machines and had a profit of over $1 million as his personal fortune. His incredible work ethic, plus his amazing entrepreneurial instincts, had seen him to more success than most ever achieved by the young age of 20. Having promised his mother that he would return after graduation, he kept his word and flew back. But he knew that with the money he'd made overseas, he would be able to make a bigger, better business in the East. He quickly came up with 40 potential businesses that he could start, ranking them based on various metrics. He reasoned that with computers rising all over the world, not to mention the advice of his mentor Fajardo, he should move into technology, creating SoftBank, a company that produced software. Of course, at the time, personal computing was in its primordial form, and the company struggled to take off. Masa produced magazines to try and get people interested, even as people around him insisted that he had to stop or he would lose all of his money. However, Masa persisted, and by the 90s, it paid off. However, nature was about to provide him with a serious problem: overcoming health issues. At the age of just 26, Masa's plans were derailed enormously when he began to fall very ill. His doctor gave him the tragic news that he had chronic hepatitis and that he was unlikely to live more than 5 years. Bedridden in hospital, with a wife of his own and a child with another on the way, Masa was facing a death sentence. He'd also borrowed from the banks and knew that if they found out about his illness, his funding would be cut. He would actually sneak out of the hospital and attend meetings, purely to keep up the facade that everything was okay. And he consumed over 4,000 books when in the hospital. Finally, after 3 years like this, he recovered, and the terror of his impending doom had convinced him of only one thing: that he had to work even harder and think bigger than he had ever before. He guided SoftBank to over $1 billion in revenue, eventually taking the company public. To say that he was ahead of his time is an understatement, as Masa was convinced a long time before others that technology was going to change the world, and began to place outlandish bets and investments into tech companies like Yahoo, which at the time was valued at $40 million. He was right, of course, and then Yahoo investment alone made SoftBank an enormous profit when the company was valued at $800 million just a few months later. More investment. Whenever Masa made a profit, he would immediately invest it into something new again, and SoftBank began to act like a venture capital fund, no longer producing technology, but actually buying other tech companies that Masa thought would do well. In that sense, the name SoftBank actually fits well. By the end of the 90s, Masa had invested over $3 billion into over 800 tech startups. He was meeting 200 entrepreneurs every quarter, looking for the next big thing in the technology industry, which was by now ready to explode. Despite the fact that not all the investments panned out, Masayoshi Son realized that one huge winner would cover his losses. And that big winner finally came in 2000, when Masa made what is widely considered the greatest venture capital investment of all time. The big one. A small Chinese internet company called Alibaba came to Masa's attention. Despite the fact that the owner, Jack Ma, said that the company did not actually need any investment at the time, Masa, sensing the huge potential, insisted. He also said that he saw a sparkle in Jack Ma's eyes, and they agreed on a $20 million from SoftBank into the company. That investment would later become worth over $70 billion. It was around this time that he began to be known as the Bill Gates of Japan, except without the malevolence. In fact, for 3 days, right in the middle of the year 2000, the eccentric investor actually surpassed Bill Gates as the richest man in the world. But then, what was coming next would shatter that reality and replace it with another, a very different one. Don't stop me now. The dot-com bubble was a stock market event that was caused by the excessive speculation of internet-related companies in the late 90s, something that Masa was extremely responsible for his part in. Between 1995 and 2000, the NASDAQ stock market rose 400%, only to fall 78% by October 2002. As a result, Masa lost $70 billion. That is more than anyone else has ever lost in all of history, even since. However, undeterred, Masayoshi Son did not sit back, reconsider, or even begin to lose faith. He doubled down, throwing money at more and more investment opportunities. Think of him as similar to someone on the Wall Street Bets Reddit, except with the kind of money that means you can afford to bet huge. He also remained highly outspoken and never lost his talent for finding his way into important people's offices. He actually barged into the Japanese government's technology office. Masa declared that this is the end, and declared that if the government didn't do business with him, he would literally pour gasoline all over himself and set himself on fire. He was then able to secure the business, launching broadband in Japan at half of SoftBank's rivals' prices. He believed that add-on services would cover the losses here, and his focus, as always, was getting a share of the market. Forward thinking. Masa has always been ahead of the curve, and he saw the rise of smartphones as the next wave on internet use in the early 2000s, and he contacted Steve Jobs, demanding to be given the exclusive rights to the iPhone. He said he would buy a phone company to provide service, and sure enough, he soon bought out Vodafone Japan for $20 billion. And
We have not talked to anybody, but you came to see me as the first guy. I give to you.
And became the exclusive seller of the amazing new device. Realizing that he had missed out on some big deals like Amazon, thanks to not having free capital to invest, Masa realized he needed a war chest, a massive fund that he could use for any investment as the world continues to grow. This is when he conceived the Vision Fund, a massive $100 billion venture capital fund.
Supposed to be a fund of $100 billion?
Yes.
Now that would be the biggest fund ever raised. So when you told people you were going to raise a $100 billion fund, did they tell you you were a little crazy?
Well, some people said.
People called him crazy, but he knew right where to go. The answer came from Saudi Arabia, a country trying to diversify its economy away from fossil fuels. Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince of the country, was keen to funnel the country's wealth into things besides the unfashionable fuel source and found Masayoshi Son as the answer. In the space of 45 minutes, Masa convinced bin Salman to invest $45 billion. $1 billion a minute. The downside. Masayoshi Son believes, as many do at the moment, that the next big wave of technology for humanity will be AI, and the Vision Fund is his way of ensuring he is in the conversation. However, not everyone believes that Masa's ideas are good. Some say that his habit of insisting on investing more than companies need makes them complacent or encourages them to take crazy risks, trying to run before they can walk. In many cases, Son's investments have actually doomed companies rather than helping them. He also invests in rival technologies, like how he invested in both Uber and Grab, which perform basically the same services. The life plan. Whatever people think of Masayoshi Son, he has achieved every goal that he has set out for himself so far. His plan to start a company in his 20s, build his wealth in his 30s, deploy that wealth in his 40s, tie up loose ends in the 50s, and hand it over to the next wave in his 60s is well on cue. And for a guy whose name is not that well known, he sure has been instrumental in almost every type of tech we have today. He might be the craziest billionaire in the world, but he certainly seems to also have everybody's success in his heart. Would you make any decisions like Masayoshi Son? Make your voice heard in the comments, and please leave a like if you enjoyed this video. If you're interested in learning more about other similar people, please be sure to subscribe to the channel and ring the bell for notifications so that you never miss out. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.